What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So information, in my opinion, is the most useful thing that anyone can own. At the end of the day, it's how you build businesses, how you create empires, it's how you pass knowledge on to other people. Information is invaluable. But getting the right information out of people is incredibly difficult, and knowing what information you need in the first place is pretty tough. Knowing what questions to ask at the right time comes with time and experience. But the overall question that I come back to is, what is the right question?
That, detective, is the right question.
Well, before we delve into what some examples of the right question are for me, I want to go through a quick process that you can use to figure out what are the right questions that you should be answering. No. What are the right questions that you should be asking? Number one, most importantly, the right question is entirely dependent upon your goal. If you want to find out about a career, there's no use asking somebody what their favourite football team is. So define your goal clearly to make sure you're asking questions to the right people and on the right track. One way to make sure that you do this well is to set a measurable objective for every conversation that you think you need to get something valuable out of. For example, if you're asking somebody about their career, set a goal of what it is you want to find out exactly about their career. Is it what their favourite thing is? Is it what they hate most about their job? Is it something that you can quantify? For example, how many hours do you work a week? Or what's your overall opinion on X, Y, and Z? Once you have an objective in mind, this means that you can frame the conversation and your questions to drive towards that, and hopefully you'll gain more value out of the conversation in the long run. Secondly, ask uncomfortable questions. The reason topics of conversation are uncomfortable is probably because you're not very confident on them. In most cases, people are extremely confident about the things they know most about, and they're significantly less confident about things that they're not so sure on or that they don't know at all. This is where there's stuff to be learned. If you're more confident on something, you've probably covered it before. Try asking something you've never asked before, or question people in ways you haven't thought of before. When you're uncomfortable, you'll make your best discoveries. Next, you should plan for follow-up questions. Now, you're never going to be able to anticipate exactly what reply somebody gives, but if you know the topic of conversation you're heading towards, it's helpful to have some useful follow-up questions to fill in the gaps on your knowledge. This way, if their first answer isn't exactly up to standard, then you can follow up with a slightly different angle to try and get a different and slightly better answer. The next thing is to know that you might not be asking the right question to start with. And that means that in the conversation, you need to be listening. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should be listening a lot more than you're talking, especially if there's more than just a one-to-one conversation going on. So even if your initial question you think is well researched or well framed, listen out for what things you can learn and ask more questions about, because the right question might come about completely naturally. And finally, one of the key things in asking the right question is to remove framing and bias from your questions. There's no point framing a question that leads somebody in a certain way, because all that's going to do is confirm the assumptions you've already made. There's no point in leading people into confirming assumptions you've already made, because then you never get an honest opinion. Try and be as unbiased as possible when you're approaching conversations. So with those tips in mind, I've come up with 3 scenarios and 3 example questions that I think would be useful in order to frame and get the best value out of a conversation. Firstly, if you're young and you want to learn about jobs that might be suitable for you or investing and building money over time, then you should use a combination of 2 questions. You should ask how much somebody earns from what they do for a living, and you should follow that up with what their net worth is. Now, the reason I specify between both of those is that people can earn a hell of a lot of money, but be terrible at saving it and never do anything with it. So from asking people what they earn, you can find out about what careers pay well or what careers might be suitable for you if financial reward is something you seek. Whereas asking people about their net worth is much more likely to put you in contact with people who actually know how to manage their money, how to make investments, and actually save and invest regularly. This is a perfect example of asking questions that are awkward or uncomfortable. Most people don't like talking about money. Now, in my opinion, that's mainly because people aren't very confident on the matter. People don't like owning up to the fact that actually they don't know how to invest, or they don't even know the first thing about how to use anything other than a general bank savings account. And this isn't their own fault. This is largely to do with the failure of the education system, and also, in most cases, the fact that generationally, parents just don't educate their children about financials. And so, with this being an awkward and uncomfortable question to ask, you should ask a wide variety of people, because some people will be more willing to give you answers than others, and you want to try and build as broad of an understanding of the landscape as you can. So a second scenario and a second question is if you want to just open the door to a new industry or open the door on a new concept you haven't thought of before. And in this case, the question you should be asking people is, who can I talk to about X, Y, or Z that you know? It's actually sometimes better to ask other people who they know to talk about something rather than asking them directly about the topic. They say that net worth is your net worth, and this couldn't be more true. If you think to yourself, I really want to learn about programming, and you think, who do I know? Oh, well, I've got that one friend that knew programming in school. I'll ask them. But if you go directly to them and say, how much do you know about programming or about Python or a specific different task that you want to do? That's a very limited wealth of knowledge, and it's not so often that they'll recommend somebody else they know because they feel like they could probably do it better, or they feel that you came to them and they don't want to pass you on to somebody else. Whereas if you ask who you can talk to about something, you're leveraging not just the people you know directly, but everyone that they know. If you ask your parents or your friends, they might know people that you don't know who could be experts in a field. So that's one of the most useful things you can do, is actually approach questions on different topics with, who can I talk to about a certain topic? And this works for more than just career standpoints and research and things like that. You can use it for things like well-being, or for personal development, or for learning about new hobbies. Just asking if anybody knows someone that you can talk to is a really useful skill, and I think is one of the most useful questions you can ask. And the final scenario and question, in my opinion, again comes from the kind of uncomfortable point, but also comes from a measurable objective, is that when you're applying for a new job, rather than asking about all the positives of the job, you should ask about the negatives. So potentially open your questioning with, what do you dislike the most about your job? Or what's the worst thing about your job? Number one, this will catch people completely off guard, which means you're more likely to get an honest and open answer. People typically expect people to just ask them, what's the best thing about your job? Why do you love what you do? If you ask them what they dislike, it makes them think for a second and just do a double take on what they're actually going to be saying to you. The benefits of this question is that you get to learn some of the realities of the job. And this is especially true when it comes to going into an industry you don't really know, because everyone will oversell what they do. People want to sound important, they want to sound like what they do is fun or interesting. And so they tend to oversell things if you ask them about the sector that they work in. So opening with something that's more negative actually can help frame the conversation in a better way for you. So those are scenarios and questions that I think match together, where that is the right question for that type of scenario. If you have come up with any questions of your own that you think are the right question, put them down in the comments. I'm always happy to see what questions you have and what feedback you have on my videos. So please do drop a like on this video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment as I just said, and subscribe if you are new around here. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.